So I use keyframes on a large majority of my videos to add motion, creativity, impact, the list goes on. Not only is it an easy way to level up your videos, but there's plenty of tricks behind them and a ton of ways that you can implement them. So with all that being said, it's time to break down my 3 favorite keyframing tips and tricks and how you can creatively implement them in your future videos. Be sure to like and subscribe if this video helps you. You can find my Instagram in the description below where I'm active almost every single day. So the first tip I have for you guys is to use the transform tool inside of Premiere Pro and After Effects, really for 2 specific reasons. One is that it usually enhances flexibility and options when editing, and 2, it allows you to add motion blur natively inside of the tool. So most people nowadays would just keyframe the scale here. So for example, if I was going to do a zoom out, we could keyframe it at 200 and reset it, and then you have a zoom out just like that. And don't get me wrong, it looks good, but you can add a little bit more creativity to the keyframes while using the transform tool. So let me go ahead and show you guys. I'm just going to reset this. So with your clip selected, let's go into the effects and find transform, double click it and it'll apply to your clip. Let's do the same thing we were just doing. Set this to 200 to do a zoom out, keyframe it, bring it out to the end and reset it. Make sure to drag this keyframe all the way to the end when you're done. But if we go ahead and deselect composition shutter angle and set this to 360, it will add motion blur in for us, as you can see. If we go frame by frame, you can see it's adding motion blur for us. You can also set this to 180 if you don't want as much motion blur, which just cleans up that zoom out transition and adds a little bit more creativity to the keyframes. We could also do it the opposite way, keyframe it at 100 and do a zoom in to 200%, drag that out, and now we've got the same effect just zooming in with a little bit of motion blur. I get up this to 360. Another important thing to note about the transform tool as well is if you have a bunch of videos on top of one another on your timeline, you can apply a transform tool to an adjustment layer above all of that, and all the keyframes will apply to the clips below it. So for example, if I took an adjustment layer, put it on top of the clip here we were working on, I could then go into my effects, grab the transform tool again, and this is on top of the adjustment layer, and then I could just make my keyframes scale in however much I want. So anything that's below this adjustment layer will have the keyframes added to it, which is a nice way to add keyframes when you have a bunch of videos stacked on top of one another. For tip number 2, we're going to talk about using the anchor point. There's 2 important things you can do with the anchor point. The first is it can change where the zoom in or keyframes are going to happen, and it can be keyframed to follow the motion of a subject or object. So I want to track the fingers of the DJ up until he reaches the knobs here. So what I'm going to do is grab the transform tool again and click on the anchor point, and you will see the circle in the middle here. What we want to do is keyframe it, come all the way out to almost the end. Then we're going to start adjusting the anchor point, which this circle right here is just showing us where we're moving, but where the center circle is where our zoom is going to happen. So I'm going to keep clicking and dragging it until it lines up with the button right about here. Now if we go through it, you can see it tracks the motion of the hand. So you can see that we have the black around the clip here, so we need to zoom this in so we can keyframe it. Go to the keyframe here and to zoom in till that black point is gone, or however much we want to. So now we've got a tracked zoom in effect. If you don't want to add a zoom, you can just go out to the last keyframe and just make sure to zoom in your clip until there's no more black showing. Don't forget to set your composition shutter angle to whatever you want to get that motion blur. Now if we play through it, we've got a nice tracked motion blur look effect to it. If we were to do the same kind of keyframes without moving the anchor point, it would look something like this. If I was just to keyframe the scale under the motion tab here and bring it up to whatever we want here, you can see that it just zooms in to the center of the frame, because if we click on the anchor point, that's where it is. So as we go frame by frame here, you'll see that it's just zooming into the anchor point in the center here. It's not zooming in to where we want it. So that's why I like to use the anchor point and keyframe that instead. Another example here is I want it to zoom in more towards his face. So I'm going to bring the transform on here, keyframe the anchor point and the scale all the way out to the end. And I'm going to start moving the anchor point like right about here. I just want it closer to his face. And then I'm going to scale in as much as I want to. Now, if I go frame by frame, you'll see it zooms in and up to wherever we have our anchor point here. And the third tip I have for you guys is to use keyframe interpolation to add some creativity to those keyframes. So for example here, I'm going to put a transform tool onto this clip here. I'm going to do a scale in up to about halfway here to say like 150. And I'm going to come back out here and reset it. Now I'm going to expand this a little bit so you guys can see this a little bit more. If we highlight these keyframes, right click and then click easy out, you'll see that the icons change. But if we open up the drop down menu, you will see these lines. Really, we're just going to be adjusting these blue bars to change the speed of the keyframes. Firstly, let's play through the clip and just see how this looks. Zooms out, zooms in. just looks super basic. If we click on this first keyframe, we can click and drag this line right here, which will change the look and the speed of the keyframe. Now, if we play through it, you can see it zooms in later on and is a little bit more of an impactful zoom. If we go to the center keyframe here, we can adjust this guy too. Let's play through it again. We got to zoom here and zoom out at the end. So it's a little bit more delayed. So you can play with these blue bars and change the timings of the keyframes completely. So I want to show you guys something I don't really see a lot of people do that can change your keyframes. For example, I'm going to scale in here, keyframe it, come out a little bit and reset it. And then towards the end, I'm going to keyframe it again and just scale it into say like 200. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight all of the keyframes, and when you highlight them, you'll obviously see all these options for keyframe interpolation. I like to use easy out a lot, so let's click easy out and then right click again and click easy in. Now you'll see it created these C shapes for us, and we can adjust those blue bars even more as we zoom in here. Quick note, when you're adjusting these blue bars, make sure that it stays at 0, which you can see right here, which is the velocity. If you end up moving this up or down, it's going to mess up the keyframes a little bit and you might squeeze it in or out too much. And a good way to make sure that you don't have that issue is if you put your playhead to the beginning here, you'll see it's at 0. And as you click and drag this, just make sure when you let go of it here, it's at 0. So now we've got a super delayed zoom out right here. You could also undo this and we could go to this keyframe, which you can see is at 0. I'm gonna click and drag this blue bar, and now you'll see it's a really quick zoom out at the beginning. Let's do the same thing at the end of the clip here. We can click on this keyframe, we can drag this in. So now we've got a super delayed zoom in, obviously making sure that we're dragging this keyframe all the way to the end when we're actually done our keyframing. Personally, I like to click and drag this out here. I'm gonna drag this out, come back here to the beginning, make sure that's selected to easy in so we get that nice C shape. Click and drag this out until it's at 0. Now if we play through the clip, you'll see it's a nice smooth zoom out there and a nice smooth zoom in at the very end. I haven't added motion blur yet, so I'll unselect this and set it to say 360. Now we'll even have some motion blur with those keyframes, which will make it look a little bit better. So basically what I'm trying to say is use keyframe interpolation to change your keyframes entirely. Instead of making keyframes that might look super linear, make ones that look less digital and more smooth and creative. I'm not trying to harp on linear keyframing at all, but I just want to show you guys ways that you can take those keyframes and make them look different than what everybody else is doing. So when you combine all 3 of these tips using the transform tool, using the anchor point, and using keyframe interpolation, you can make videos that look like this.